Hello, everybody. A spoiler alert is in effect. This is the May Queens podcast. I am Mary Graves.
And I'm Heather.
And we are the May Queens. Heather, how has your week been? Have you done anything fun? Watch any good horror movies?
Let's see. I watched all of Lovecraft Country.
Oh, what'd you think of that?
I was pretty obsessed. It was incredibly, it was very dramatic, and like, I feel like they did everything that was, Lovecraftian. It was just like perfect. And the cast was just probably one of the best ensembles that I've ever seen. They were all so talented. Like, that is one show that you can really feel like the power behind the acting, and the emotions are just so intense, and I'm a type of person who can watch a movie and it's rare that I'll flinch, or it's rare that I'm unable to hold back tears. Well, for that, it was like, waterworks. But I was like, you had told me about it, I know a while back, whenever it was playing, Guts had told me about it, all the guys, and I had just done away with cable not long before that, or satellite not long before that, so I didn't have the channel anymore. So I'm glad I watched it all at once.
Yeah, it's definitely a show where there's what the fuck moments in every episode, and just I know it's based on like historical events to the I don't want to give anything away for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, because it's still somewhat new. It's less than a year old, I believe. But the historical events that they pull from for the story, and then they add the magic to it, it breaks your heart and makes you tear up. It's very much about, like, you get to see the war of the races, basically, in it. And so, as white people, there's a huge amount of guilt going into watching this too, but it's definitely should know about, that people just don't talk about in like history class. So it's educational as well as a really fun and really dramatic watch at the same time. And and I'm sure you did too, a lot just out of watching the show. And you're right, the acting is so intense and so great. And I still have no idea if there's going to be a season 2 for Lovecraft Country. I really hope there is, but I really think they're going to do it as an anthology series like American Horror Story, because the way the first season ends, there's really nowhere to go from there. I'm excited to see what they do with it next, and they better do something with it next, because Misha Green and I can't remember who else the writers are. I know Misha Green was one of the head people on that show writing for it. It's very talented writer. I know she was going off of a book though, so it's not like a completely original story, but maybe she can adapt another book. Maybe that's where she shines, or maybe she'll take a shot at writing something completely original. I'd like to see what she, open herself up and see what she can do, but that's a great show.
I'll say this and then I'll stop, because I know we're limited on time, but I just love whenever there's a movie or a show, whatever, that you get into and you feel some type of way about every single character. Like, that doesn't ever happen. And like, even the ones who aren't, who definitely need character work, as we all do, that like whenever they can, like, when you can get invested into them, it says a lot about the film and everything like that. But yeah, watch it.
I got to see the new Mortal Kombat that came out over the weekend. Have you watched that yet?
No, I haven't watched it yet. I'll probably watch it tonight with maybe before bed with the boys. How was it?
Amazing and very gory, but other than Kano saying fuck a lot in the movies, and it's just really the deaths. They do the fatalities really well from the games. So I will say that about that, in terms of the R rating. The opening, this opening scene is actually available on YouTube. They posted it before the movie actually came out, so I watched that ahead of time, and I think the opening stuff is really great. The ending, like 30 minutes, is really great. There's some pacing issues in the middle there, some characters I would have liked to have seen more of, some storylines that they talk about but they don't show that I would have liked to have seen. Stuff like that I would have changed. But overall, it's a really fun movie to watch. And I've watched it twice already. I watched it the night it came out because I couldn't wait. And then, the day it came out, because it was Friday night, and I was watching Joe Bob, of course. But I watched it the day it came out, and then I lied to my brother the next day, told him I didn't watch it yet, and we watched it together. I had to act like everything was a surprise. But whatever. Uh, and so it was a fun movie. I'll probably watch it again. But I still have to watch Godzilla one more time before they pull it, which happens in like 4 days.
Did it have a lot of the female characters from Mortal Kombat? Because I'm wondering if my daughter, I think she might want to watch it too.
It only had two, really, from the game. Two? Yes, I want to say, oh, three. It had three, but they weren't all from the original game. One of them was from one of the games that came out in the early 2000s. But they do have a couple of characters because the main guy you're following throughout the movie, he has a wife and a daughter. So they play somewhat of a significant role in the movie as well. So you do have outside characters. Like I'm pretty sure the main character isn't even in the games. It was just a guy they created, I think, to have an outside point of view to what was going on with everybody else. They have a nice focus, and you know this in the preview, of the Scorpion and Sub-Zero storyline too, which if you've watched the original Mortal Kombat, which is amazing and it's still my favorite, they really don't do much with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. You get to see them fight, but they're under Shang Tsung's control, and you just get to see them like battle other people. You don't really get to see them battle each other. So you get to see a lot more of them in this movie, and I really like that. But I could still even use more Scorpion, because Scorpion in this movie is amazing. So I'm excited for you to watch it.
Jade isn't in there?
No. Okay, so I didn't know this. But I mean, you know this if you look at the cast list and stuff. But the woman with the mouth, I thought that was Jade too. It's not. It's Melina. And apparently in the games, I didn't play the games that much. I watched my brothers play them mostly. But Melina has like a mouth that opens up really wide. That's Melina. I thought that was going to be Jade too, but no Jade. There's Sonya though. Sonya still plays a really huge role in this, but I could have still have seen more of her storyline.
Those are my two favorites, Sonya Blade or Cage and Jade.
Well, I say, not to spoil anything, but they do leave it open for a sequel. So maybe that's where we'll get to see more of those other characters come in. I'm excited. I would want a sequel, definitely.
Hopefully that'll happen.
Yeah. All right. So today's show is another Films and Flames episode. And we are talking about one of my picks today, which is the 2003 Halle Berry movie, Gothika. I know this is another one of those controversial picks. It's another Dark Castle pick. I know I did Orphan a couple months back. And for some reason, I just love these movies, even though they're not so beloved by people who watch them. But rewatching Gothika, there are definitely some things, especially about the ending, that I would change. But overall, as a movie, it's a really great, creepy ghost story. It's basically The Changeling if The Changeling happened in a psychiatric facility, which, by the way, I have not watched all of The Changeling either. That might be one of my Terror Tuesdays movies in the next year. But I do have an understanding for how the story goes because I've seen it in so many documentaries. But I will say that this movie, it's definitely your ghost comes forth and reaches out to somebody. It's like the Ghost Whisperer, but more insane kind of thing. Have you seen Gothika before, or was this your first watch for this movie?
Or I probably saw it right when it came, right after it came out.
Okay. What do you think of this movie overall?
I like it. The ending has a nice twist, which I mean, kind of thought it would lead that direction. Yeah, I really liked it. I'm glad that it ended on the note that it did, and that, well, actually, it kind of ended leaving you hanging. That's right. Yeah, but I mean, I thought it was good.
Cool. All right. Well, we start off with Halle Berry's character talking to, I completely forgot this actress was in this movie too, because it's been so long since I've watched it. You have Penelope Cruz. I'm not 100% sure. It's Penelope Cruz. There's no H in there. It's Penelope, I'm pretty sure. In this movie, Miranda is a psychiatrist at a prison psychiatric ward. And Penelope Cruz is Chloe, playing one of the patients there who killed her stepfather, who apparently was raping her. And you get all this from this interaction with her. And Chloe is making up a story that a devil came to visit her and took advantage of her in her cell that night. Now, we're introduced to Chloe and we're introduced to Miranda, Halle Berry's character, and Halle Berry comes off as professional woman. She's got it all together. And Chloe comes off as a psychopath, basically. What were your thoughts with this interaction with Miranda and Chloe?
I was kind of aggravated that she kept saying that Chloe was embellishing her stories, because I could see where you might think that, but like, just, I felt like she should have invested herself a little bit more to see if there was any symbolism in what she was saying. I kind of felt sorry for Chloe because she just immediately was writing it off. And then of course, who she goes to with it wasn't exactly the best person to go to talk about your patient you're not supposed to, share information with. But I guess I guess there's a difference when you're married to the person who's over stuff.
I also wonder if it's different when you're in a prison, unless compared to being like just talking to your therapist or your psychiatrist and you're out in the real world, like then maybe there's doctor-patient confidentiality. But if you're dealing with like a criminal case, I'm guessing she has to share it with the people involved in the criminal case. But we have a great amount of character establishment for Miranda in the few short minutes that we have in the opening of the movie. We've got, she's not really listening to Chloe. She's interpreting things as if they were just, completely mixed up in what actually happened instead of things that are currently happening to Chloe, which we find out later. And we find out that she's married to the boss guy, Charles S. Dutton, who he's a suave guy, I get it. But as she's talking to Charles S. Dutton, Doug was his name in the movie, in walks Robert Downey Jr. I'm pretty sure it was a pre-Iron Man too, Robert Downey Jr. So he's beautiful and charming and suave. He's basically Iron Man minus the suit plus a psychiatric degree, psychology degree. I don't know which kind of degree you guys get when you become a psychologist or psychiatrist. He can give you the good drugs. There you go. And obviously there's some sort of flirting going on, but Halle Berry is Halle Berry. So what straight guy, specify that, is going to be stupid enough not to try to hit on her? So we don't really think much of it at that point, other than it's a flirting thing and he's trying to get her to do something. Or maybe they have a past or something. You hear Doug, her husband, talk about, it's good to be God after giving her advice, the whole throw in the water on the mirror thing. And it kind of fits with them being a couple at that point. There's not a huge creep factor to him yet. And we see a little bit more of Miranda. We get to see her doing the swimming thing. 55 laps. If the pool is the same size as the pool at the gym I used to belong to, that's 5.5 miles of swimming. Whoa. Yeah. Do you ever swim?
I haven't lately. I used to love to swim, but I haven't lately.
I used to belong to, we had a Urban Active out here that became LA Fitness. And I joined one because I wanted to take classes back then. And I made some good friends from that. And then I also wanted to swim because I was already kind of running on the side, just partially walking. And I thought maybe one day I'll do a triathlon. So I should practice swimming. I do 2 laps and I'm done. I'm so not in that shape. And I'm like, I can just walk the other laps until I can get swimming again. And it's a chore, but pretty physically impressive. So which that obviously comes back into her character later on in the movie. We get to the scene where she is leaving and she's driving, and it's a nice big stormy night. What did you think about Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Pete, Dr. Pete Grant, following Miranda down the hill from the psychiatric facility? Hell, following her out the door with the umbrella. What did you think of like these two characters at this point?
I thought he was really sweet, and you could tell that he probably wanted, a little bit more, but I was just sitting there like, I wish somebody would do that for me. And like, I'm to the point now where I don't like going many places by myself. And I used to love driving at night. Now I hate it. But, you know, for him to sit there and do all that, walk her to her car, you know, make sure she gets to her car. And I was just, I wish there were more caring souls out there like that.
Yeah, he definitely had a care for her. It does come off like he's trying to like get her to take him home or go home with him instead. Like there's a little bit of that like coworker going a little bit too far thing, but only because we know she's married. If she was not married, this would be a perfect like way to hook up with a coworker type thing. I've had it where I've had guys who are friends, if they've seen me drinking, just making sure that I was like walking me out the door, making sure I was sober enough to drive, or making sure I was taking an Uber or something. That's as cute as it's ever gotten for me at a bar or something at night. But for the most part, yeah, I'm independent, not walking home. Never walk home in Cleveland alone ever, but driving home myself. And I'm like, I'll go to the parking lot. I don't care. I'm walking fast anyways. I have my keys in my hand. Oh, got this great keychain. One of my friends gave me, one of my witchier friends gave me, and it's in the shape of a cat, but the ears, I can remember, I know I have a photo of this. I'll post a photo on it on the YouTube video. And it's one of those like not brass knuckles, but the cat's ears are pointy, and it's like a plastic. It's just a keychain, but it's like super hard and super like sharp. So you could like really do damage on somebody in case you're being attacked on the street, which it's incredibly sad that women need to think about this. But I really like it because it's purple and it's shiny and I love it. But anyway, so we get to the point where it's the stormy night. There's a sinkhole in the street. We're introduced to the sheriff, Bob. We don't know his name is Bob yet, but his name is Bob. He looks like a Bob. Played by, I believe his name is John Carroll Lynch, or John Lynch Carroll. I think it's John Carroll Lynch, who is an amazing actor. And I've loved him in American Horror Story. They've used him a few times. Most famously, he was the clown who in the Freak Show season with the face like half off, but he had a fake smile on, very creepy. And he was in the second season of Channel Zero with the no exit house, or I can't remember what it's called. It's the house you can never leave, basically. And he was actually in the movie Zodiac by David Fincher, where they were trying to track down the Zodiac Killer with Robert Downey Jr. Another connection right there. I saw that one on a date. I made a guy take me. Well, I didn't make him take me. I had free tickets to go see a movie. And I'm like, you should see this one. And I didn't really see that guy after that. So if you can't watch movies like Zodiac with me, then you cannot hang. So whatever. But he was the guy that, this movie's old enough, but spoiler alert, they basically pinned it on his real life character that he was probably the Zodiac Killer. But there's no real answer by the end of that movie because we don't really know who the Zodiac Killer is. And I always thought that was fascinating. And he's perfect for those kind of roles because he's got such a sweet face. He's like a big teddy bear, but big teddy bears can turn on you and kill you at like a drop. So absolutely love when I see him in anything. She avoids the sinkhole. She goes over a covered bridge, which I feel like a lot of bad things happen over covered bridges in horror movies. I mean, you have Sleepy Hollow covered bridge scene. You've got In the Mouth of Madness. They go through a covered bridge to get to the town where Sutter Kane is hiding, and then all the crappy monsters come out to play. Well, they're not crappy monsters, they're great monsters. It's just, oh crap when you see them. But I feel like a covered bridge is a great place for just anything to go down. And she gets to this bridge and there's a girl standing in the middle of the street. And she swerves to avoid the girl, crashes her car, and goes to check in the girl. Girl is cut up with a bunch of like slashes. Pretty good special effects, I think. They look like real slashes. And then, and this is where the 2000 special effects come in, she bursts into flames and possesses Halle Berry and everything goes dark. What were your thoughts on this whole scene?
I was just like, okay, what's about to happen? What would you think if that happens? You just get out of your car to try and help someone and then you're suddenly possessed. Like, yeah, I don't know what to think about that.
Would you have gone up to the girl? Like, okay, early 2000s, not everybody has a cell phone, and her cell phone may not have even had like a connection out in the middle of nowhere too. But my first reaction would have been to like call the police, call an ambulance or something, not to actually go up to the strange girl who could have had a knife. She could have been cutting herself. You don't know. But I feel like for a psychiatrist, she was a little too trusting of the subject before her. Logic was
Yeah.
not playing a role there.
Yeah.
Then everything goes black and Halle Berry wakes up. We find out 3 days later, and she is now a patient at the psychiatric facility. Has no idea what has happened. One of the first people she sees, other than the men called in to hold her down, and the woman, I think her name is Irene. They mentioned her name like once, coming in to give her meds to put a needle in her, basically. One of the first people she sees is Robert Downey Jr., is Dr. Pete, Dr. Grant. And he has to explain to her that her husband is dead, but not only that he's dead, but that she's killed him, or at least that she's the suspect that killed him. But then most likely she killed him because he was heard screaming her name and she had fingerprints. All her fingerprints were all over the weapon and stuff. And she was there. And that she had went into convulsions and that she went into a coma for a while, and that it was just a huge bloody mess at her house. I think at this moment they do this thing. No, actually, what do you think about this whole moment? They do the whole thing where he talks to her logically, like, think like a psychiatrist. I think you're a logical person. What am I trying to establish? They go back and forth like colleagues. What were your thoughts in this scene?
I think in that circumstance that it was okay because she really seemed to not know what she had done. And she is an educated woman with the same kind of experience as him, or maybe not the same, but, similar. He had to talk to her in a way that she could relate, and speaking to her as a doctor or, psychiatrist, therapist, whatever, that's the way that he was able to do so. But I feel like at the same time, he was still trying to make sure and maintain the fact that he was now her doctor and she was now a patient. But I feel like he got through to her, like at least he was able to let her know what she had done and reach her, and her not just sit there and stay in shock and be like, I don't believe it.
Yeah, I definitely think he was really good at maintaining a professionalism when talking to her, trying not to get too close because obviously there's a flirtatious history between them. But I also feel like with the way they focused on the faces, it was like face to face in the camera angles, and the way Robert Downey Jr. portrayed Pete, like there was always kind of like a sly smile. He was trying not to smile. I feel like this was the start of the movie trying to say that he had something to do with the guy's death, which is a great like misdirect because find out in the end that he doesn't. And then there's a little bit of a flaw in that I see towards the end of the movie too, but we'll get to that part when we get to that part. But there are other instances where we see Dr. Pete Grant pop up where I think that they're really trying to lean heavy into maybe it was him. Maybe he had something to do with it. She blacked out this entire time. Her fingerprints are on it, but he could have knocked her out and put her fingerprints on the weapon. We don't know this for sure. Doug could have been crying out Miranda's name because he was going, oh God, Miranda, because she got knocked out. You don't know. Which, by the way, we see their house later on, and it's this huge house in the middle of nowhere. Who was hearing him scream in the middle of nowhere? Like, where was the witness? I don't think their neighbors were right there. And if they were, they would have seen Miranda come home when she did. But anyway, let's see the little details like that irk me a little bit about the movie, but it's still a really great story. So Miranda freaks out at the end of that scene, and they have to calm her and, drug her up a little bit to make her complacent. And we get to the scene where they're out. She's out in Gen Pop, I believe is what they call it, general population. I've heard this term thrown around. I don't watch a lot of like, what is it, 90 days in or something, where somebody is not really a prisoner, but they're trying to talk to other prisoners and they act like they're one of the prisoners for 90 days, something like that. And Gen Pop, meaning general population, we see Miranda's character getting to be in the general population. And of course, who's one of the first people she runs into? Chloe, played by Penelope Cruz. And you think there's going to be a fight or something, but Chloe Chloe is a badass in this moment, because she not only knows that Miranda has been in this prison for a few days, but she has the article that shows that her husband has been killed and that she's a suspect, and she basically like hands it to her, with also giving the great advice that you can't trust somebody who thinks you're crazy, which I think is great advice for all of us, because like you can't trust somebody who thinks you're crazy, because no matter how much truth you tell, they're going to think that it's not really the truth, that it's a twisted version of what the truth actually is. And I wonder if like this is something that psychiatrists should, like, if they're not watching this movie, or if they're not being taught that they should maybe not approach prison, especially prison patients like this, that they think they're crazy, then maybe this is something psychiatrists need to learn, because you're not going to be able to get through to anyone who doesn't trust you, and they're not going to trust you if you come off like you think they're automatically crazy. Especially in the case of Penelope Cruz's character. Like, yeah, she killed her stepfather, but her stepfather was raping her. Like, I'm sorry, but that sounds like something you go through the mental, like the psychiatry of it all. You get assigned to somebody, maybe you're on close watch, maybe you do stay at a place for like a year or so, but you don't become a prisoner. Like, I feel like that mental break is well justified, and good riddance to good trash of her stepfather. But that's my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that, but how do you feel about that whole scene, actually, or about Chloe and Miranda?
Let's see. I mean, I feel like if I was Penelope, shit, what's her name again? Not Penelope.
Chloe.
Oh
no, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if I were her too, and my therapist had just gotten in there, I'd want to like check it out, and like, you know, I'd probably be chatty too with her or whomever. I think it's good that she did tell her that, though. You can't trust anyone if they think who thinks you're crazy, and I think it was a good way for her to like leave it open for Dr. Meredith, or no longer doctor, but for Meredith to go, and I mean not Meredith, Miranda. Sorry, Grey's Anatomy. So I felt like it was a good way for her to let her know that if she needed someone, without saying it, she was kind of like leaving the door open to her to go to her if she needed it. And I think that was her way of saying like, hey, we have been there before, you know. And I think it's good that she gave her the piece of paper to the article to show her, because I mean, like, if I were to find myself inside one of those places, I would be driving myself crazy, like thinking, okay, you know, these could be genuine actions from this person, these could be like ingenuine, and I would be like questioning everyone's integrity and like just making myself crazy. So she needs someone there for her.
It's funny though that you said Meredith Grey, because I think Miranda's last name in the movie is Dr. Miranda Gray too. I had this same thought when I was watching the movie. I'm like, Grey's Anatomy. And this was a pre-Grey's Anatomy show too, I believe. Like, that show has been on for what, 15 years now, and this movie came out in 2003. So yeah, this movie should have came out before that show, because I started watching it. I stopped watching after like the 4th or 5th season, but I didn't expect it to become a soap opera and to become a thing. I wanted there to be a finale, and they just keep killing everybody off. I'm like, I can't jump into this show. They're gonna kill off all my favorite characters. I already know this, so whatever.
I've only seen a few seasons. I had the same problem.
Okay, so then we get to the hauntings, the actual hauntings of the movie. We have Miranda in her cell, and she sees this breath appear on the window to her cell, and it says, "Not alone." Somebody with their ghost finger is putting "not alone" on the breath against the window, the condensation. And she feels the ghost going back and forth along her, and she can tell that there's something there. But from there, we also have the shower scene, which surprisingly tastefully done. I can't remember if Halle Berry had already done her nude scenes with Swordfish, and I think she was nude in Die Another Day, the James Bond movie. I think that's the one she was in. I know Swordfish, she definitely. Oh, Monsters Ball. I think that's the other one. She did a nude scene then. But you don't see anything really. Everything is like dark and shaded, and it's actually really tastefully done for a women's prison shower scene. So, you know, in horror movies, especially like in the 80s or the 70s, they'd be taking advantage of that completely, especially with a star actress like Halle Berry. But this was actually done really well and really scary, where she keeps seeing the blonde woman that she saw on the bridge popping up in the shower. And then she's looking at all their faces, the women who are actually in the shower with her, and they get distorted every time she looks at them. Then she comes face to face with the blonde woman, and she's got some sort of ghost knife in her hands. I don't even know if we see exactly what's in the girl's hands, but all these slashes start appearing on Miranda's arm and scares the shit out of everybody in the shower, and they all run and hide and leave Miranda on the ground bleeding. What were your thoughts about this whole scene? Like, what did you think was the point of the bleeding of the arm? Like, why would she do that?
I don't know, maybe it was her subconscious trying to get her to remember things. I can't remember what Dr. Pete had said, but he had said something about repressed memories. And the reason why some people were, repressed memories, was it something like they were too much to handle, or they did it for survival, something along the lines of that. So I think that it was like somehow her subconscious like speaking to her and reminding her or trying to get her to figure things out. That's just kind of what I got from it.
And that's great. The scene that follows the shower scene between her and Dr. Pete, Dr. Grant, that's another one of those great scenes, another great misdirect, because Miranda, she challenges him about her memory. Like, remind me, did we have an affair? And we get to the juicy meat of their relationship. And he's like, no, we never did. And she's like, but did you want to? He's like, yeah. Did you think I wanted to? And he's like, yeah. So we know that there was always that boundary between them. They never had sex. They never broke the marriage vows that Miranda had with Doug, which then leads the viewer to think, oh, well, maybe he would have killed off the husband, not because he did have an affair with her, but because he was so obsessed with her and he never got her. Kind of like in Psycho when Norman Bates kills I can't remember the woman's name. Yeah. In the shower. And it's because, the repressed feelings were there, but he couldn't do anything about it because of his really psychologically messed up upbringing. So he killed her. And in this case, it would be Robert Downey Jr. killing the lover. So we know that's not what happened eventually, but it's a great misdirect in the movie. And one of those scenes where it's like, this is what made her decide that she doesn't want him to be her psychiatrist anymore at the prison. Before she goes and talks to, I don't really know where this guy falls in the line of bosses. I guess the guy right underneath Doug is who she goes to talk to. Phil is the guy's name. Phil Parsons. But before that, she gets to meet with the sheriff right after she meets with Dr. Grant. And the sheriff, Bob, friendly John Carroll Lynch face, is obviously upset. He was best friends with Doug. And he's like, why did you do this? Doug loved you. Blah, blah, blah. Laying on the guilt really thick. And obviously super angry and is 100% behind throwing this woman on the electric chair and just walking away. But in the turmoil in that conversation, her arm starts to bleed and she removes the bandage from her shower encounter. And we see the words, "Not alone," carved into her arm. So it's the message that she got from the ghost in the cell. And at first she thinks it's that she wasn't alone in the house, that there was somebody else there that killed her husband. And that's when we get, hold on, I'm skipping around a little bit. Okay, first we get to the point where she talks to Pete and they have the conversation about whether or not they had an affair. Then we get to the courtyard, and she talks to Phil Parsons about not having Robert Downey Jr. as her psychiatrist anymore. And he overhears them from the building. He's got the window open. He's listening. Another misdirect that makes us think, oh, maybe he is the killer and he now knows her plan. Oh, watch out, Miranda. Then we see Miranda talking to her lawyer, Teddy. And that is when Bob shows up, Sheriff Bob shows up, and her arm starts bleeding and they remove the bandage. Okay, now we're caught up to that point. Then comes the point where we see Miranda in the office with Phil Parsons. And she's trying to explain how she thinks that there was somebody else there. There was a girl on the bridge, and there was this blonde woman who may have been in their house too, because she passed out as soon as she saw her. That's when we discover the photo in the box. And the blonde woman turns out to be Rachel Parsons, Phil's daughter, who died 4 years ago by suicide. And we don't know it's suicide yet at this point, but it's thought to be by suicide. And of course, Phil's like freaking out. That can't be possible. You know, she's been dead for 4 years, and he won't listen to her. But you know, it's something close to his heart. He wouldn't be able to think it through either. And logically, these are all psychiatrists. The word logic's tossed around a lot in this movie too. It's a little cheesy when they do it, but that is the whole point, is that supernatural goes beyond the logic of the world. Like the things we can see, there's more to it than just that. And the movie really emphasizes that point. So what were your thoughts when you found out that who she was seeing was this ghost girl?
I mean, it kind of, made sense. It was nice to finally have the answer. I feel like her purpose to her was revealed as to what she needed to do to get out of there, kind of, just that to guess like now the dad knows that, like, hey, my daughter might not have died. She might not have killed her, committed suicide. So that would just be a really difficult position to be in, to have to like tell your friend and, ex-colleague is like, hey, I think your daughter was, from my visions or the night to the murder or whatever, the ghosts that I keep seeing.
I mean, I don't think I know how to tell somebody that either. So
yeah, I mean, like you wouldn't know that they believe you.
Or they'd think you're taking advantage of them too. Like, yeah, the Phil could have been thinking that Miranda was trying to get out of being convicted of murder by saying, hey, your ghost daughter did it. Like, it was a ghost. Can't prove it, but it was. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that, like, I forgot how connected the dead girl was to that psychiatric facility, other than what had happened to her and by who. I forgot that she was related to this guy until this rewatch over the last week. So that was like, remembering that was shocking alone to me. But I thought, great connection. That's why the ghost would reach out to somebody within the facility too, because it's so interconnected to what happened to her. Then, so a couple more things. One, the not alone comes up when her arm is bleeding. It's actually what she also, as possessed by Rachel, wrote on the walls in Doug's blood after she had killed him, or during the killing, who knows. But the not alone pops up a lot throughout this movie. But that happens when she's being interrogated by Sheriff Bob. She sees the picture that says not alone, and that's when her arm starts to bleed. So just throwing that out there too. But then we get to the scene, the first attempted escape, where Miranda goes, if you are the ghost of Rachel Parsons, you will let me out of here. And Rachel obliges and opens the cell door for her. And then Miranda tries to escape. She gets down to Dr. Grant's office. She actually tries to go to her own office, but she ends up not being able to get in there because it's locked and it's designated a crime scene. So she goes to Dr. Pete's office, looks on the computer, and that's when she discovers that it was ruled a suicide, that Rachel Parsons committed suicide, because the ghost of Rachel pops the article up on the computer. And then the security cameras pop up on the screen, and it's the area where Chloe has been put in solitary because they thought Chloe might have had something to do with the scratches, the slashes on Miranda's arm at one point. So Miranda says, oh, this is a sign. I should go find Chloe. Runs to solitary to go find Chloe's cell. And that's when we see Chloe being thrown up against her cell doors. And there's a figure in there with her with I can't remember what they call it. It's basically the woman in chains burning tattoo on his chest, which becomes a huge symbolism. Do you know what it's called?
Anima Sola, I think.
Yes.
I'm probably butchering it, saying it, but yeah.
Sounds pretty close. I'll say anima sola. Anima sola. I think it's like a rhythm, the way they say it too every time. But yes, so we have a better understanding of what's going on with Chloe. The devil came to me last night and entered me, and I was burning on the inside. It's her symbolism for the fact that there's somebody raping women in these cells, and now Halle Berry's character knows that this is going on, which, I mean, there are cameras all over this place. I feel like if you're hearing this symbolism, if you're doing your due diligence as a psychiatrist, especially in a prison, like, yeah, we eventually know who's doing this, and I get why maybe some people turn their backs. I feel like there's a bigger conspiracy that needs to be checked out at this prison for sure. But it's like she could have just checked the woman's, like the cameras pointing in the direction of her cell that night. Just do a little fast forward on the footage and see what you could find. And she didn't. She just didn't believe the person that she was there to help, pretty much. So we have this great big realization, and unfortunately Miranda gets caught at this point and gets dragged back into a new cell. Actually, it's more not quite solitary. They don't call it solitary. It has a slightly bigger window, but it is a small window compared to the huge window that she had before. And they blamed her getting out on the electricity because the electricity was flickering throughout the movie. So something released the locks and she got on out. We have the scene where Robert Downey Jr., where Dr. Pete is talking to Miranda after the escape, and he's telling her, you're getting transferred to a different room, one strike, and you're completely in solitary, so don't mess up. And he tries to psych her out of her thoughts, that this is the ghost of Rachel Parsons talking to her, that it's not some sort of, repressed memories that she's dealing with on her own, that she's just trying to find a way to explain her behavior instead of just coming to terms with it. All I could think of is, now I understand why they would never date, because I would never want to date a psych major who would talk to me that way. Like I was crazy. And I think she throws it back in his face too, the line that Chloe said to her about, you can't trust somebody who thinks you're crazy. And then we get to the courtyard scene between Chloe, the outdoor courtyard between Chloe and Miranda. And first of all, I love the scene for two reasons. One, because it's a really sweet scene. And two, leading up to it, you see these two people playing volleyball at the nets, and they're really bad at it. It's like they're standing this far apart from each other with the net in between, and they just can't get the ball to go up. It's just like blip, and it just keeps hitting the net, and it's really bad. It's really bad volleyball. I mean, if you're in prison and this is all you can do with your time, wouldn't you get better at volleyball eventually?
You would think.
It's a little distracting leading up to the scene where Miranda goes up to Chloe, and Chloe is beaten to crap because of what happened to her the night before. And Miranda apologizes to Chloe for not believing her. She's trying to get Chloe to tell her, who was that was in there with you? And Chloe, she's not completely mentally there. They're drugging her too much to begin with too. And all she does is, as Miranda's got her back turned towards her, she takes her from behind and hugs her. But then she goes, he told me you're next. Totally creepy. And just a great lead into the big escape that happens towards the next half of this movie, and towards almost the end of the movie. So we get to the escape scene. Well, actually, no. What did you think of this whole Chloe Miranda interaction? First of all,
about her going and telling Miranda. I'm trying to say the right name. I mean, I'd want to know if I was next, and I probably wouldn't have doubted that. I probably would have immediately believed her. So I'm glad that they finally have broken through that level, the thing that they've broken through to. They're kind of like both telling each other that they don't think each other are crazy, and like they finally have a bond. And I think it's definitely necessary for them to have to get out of there. I just think that it just needed Miranda. Fuck. Uh, she just needed to have that experience for her to finally open her eyes, because like we've said before, like or last week I was saying, like, you don't really know unless you've been in a certain position. And some people, they can read all of the facts and have everything presented to them, but unless they experience it for themselves, they're not going to believe it. And then you still have some people who can experience it and still be in denial.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Miranda, this is where her character really has a huge arc, because she's not that businesswoman. She's not that person with the boundary that she had between her and the patients. She is experiencing a taste of what they're experiencing, not full on. Like, Miranda never becomes a rape victim in this. Really, she's only a victim of the ghost and the things that her husband was hiding from her, which is bad enough as it is. Nobody should be possessed, and nobody should be in a marriage where you really don't know the person you're in a marriage with, which, by the way, that's alone is terrifying. I know this is directed by a man, I'm pretty sure, Matthew something.
Like that.
Something like that. And it's spelled like French too, so I probably will butcher the pronunciation. But there's a real huge theme of female fears throughout this movie that I think is done really well. The idea that you could be married to somebody for so long, you could be dating them and be in love with them, and they could be in love with you, but you don't know their darkest inner being. And hopefully it's not the kind of a thing that comes out and murders other girls or anybody, but you never really know until you know. So that is terrifying, and that'll keep me single for the rest of my life probably.
Mhm.
Anyway, we get to the big escape scene, a nice like escape from Alcatraz type scene, but with a ghost. And we have first Miranda in this tiny room with the tiny window and being watched on security cameras. And the ghost just starts fucking her up, just tossing her against walls back and forth. And according to the security guards on the cameras, looking at the cameras, they think she's trying to commit suicide in this room. Genius. Miranda passes out, or fakes passing out, after being beaten and thrown across the room. The security guards come in, and Miranda just like, I think she takes the needle of the nurse that came in, Irene, and stabs one of the guards with it and puts the sleepy stuff in him instead, grabs the keys, and just starts bolting. And this is where her swimming and athleticism really comes into play, because not only is she jumping off a thing, she's climbing through open fences. She finds an unused part of the prison that is being renovated or something. Re-renovated. It's being renovated or something. And she literally falls from the first floor to the second to get out of there. But before that, I'm pretty sure it's before that, a lot happens during this escape scene, is the pool scene. And I don't know if you do this. I do this almost every time I watch a movie that has a scene like this in it. But when somebody is underwater and holding their breath, I tend to hold my breath too. Do that?
Yeah. It's like you feel the intensity, and I don't know why.
There's this one scene in True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he dives into the water because there's an explosion and you see him swimming, and I hold my breath every time. And for some reason that scene is so long that I can't get to the end, because they keep going back and forth between like Tia Carrera, who shot the bomb or something at him, or the missile at him, and before he actually pops his head out of the water. But this one was only about 1 minute and 8 seconds, and I was able to do it when I watched this movie. So I think progress, but I came close to not being able to, so I still have to work on my breath control a little bit. But genius. If you are trying to escape from somewhere and there's a pool, just get into the darkest corner of the pool, hold your breath, try not to breathe out air to make air bubbles, and go low. Like, that's the problem too. inner ear stuff, and she went really deep into the deep end. I don't think I'd be able to do that. Do you think you'd be able to do that?
No, my ears swell shut often. Like there's no way.
Last time, God, I don't even think it was that deep. Like I was just swimming in water and I went a couple feet deep, probably back at my old gym that I used to try to do laps in. And the pressure in just those few feet, it's like, I don't know how people go scuba diving. I could probably do snorkeling, but I don't trust that I wouldn't breathe in water if I was doing that. So, oh, I'll just stay on dry land and just look at the pretty water. It's fine for me. So she escapes. She steals somebody's car. I'm not even sure whose car this was. Do you know whose car that it was that she took?
Oh, it was the guy who was watching on like some of the cameras or something, who was some kind of guard.
Okay, so it's the key she stole. They were from the keychain then. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So she steals this guy's car. The ghost almost gets her into a car accident, which I don't know why this ghost would be a dick like that. But at one point, she has no control over the brakes and the gas, and a huge semi is coming, and she barely gets by, scrapes like the corner of her car against it, and we get to the point where she is home, and her beautiful home, by the way. Only problem with this home is the kitchen sucked. They walked by the kitchen, and I'm like, that could use some renovating. I mean, even like for an early 2000s kitchen, it had like tile, what do you call it, countertops. Like when people use tile for the countertops instead of like a slab of stone, so gross. It's like you get grout like in the middle of your countertop. No, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I watch a lot of HGTV, so I really have an idea of like the style things should be after watching these shows. This is not good. It's not even that big. I think it's open to the living room, but it's a tiny kitchen. I don't like it. Even the fridge was small. And Charles is Dutton, smooth operator, big dude. He's gonna need more food in that. He's gonna need a bigger fridge, especially if he's sharing with anyone. But anyway, we get to the crime scene at the house, and she goes through this reverse process while she's there, where she's seeing her husband and the axe, and it kind of goes backwards until she gets to the bridge, and the ghost pops out of her, and then it goes forward, and you see the flames and the ghost actually entering Halle Berry, and then her walking home, obviously because her car is still in the ditch. So yeah, I wonder if they even found her car in the ditch. Like, wouldn't they think she had some sort of physical trauma that could have caused her a mental breakdown? That, like, you got guys with CTE in the NFL, which, okay, they didn't really talk about that in the early 2000s, but they talk about it a lot now. And they're beating up their wives and shooting up people. And it's like, this woman could have had a huge head injury in that car crash that could have caused her to come home and kill her husband. So, maybe if they remade this movie now.
Well, what is it called? TBI, traumatic brain injury, or I can't remember what.
Well, I know the NFL one is CTE, but I don't know what that stands for. I think it's like cerebral trauma something. Yeah, it's a brain trauma because they keep, bashing into each other on the field. But yeah, so they could have explained this all away just from that alone, but maybe because of how gross and how like psychotic the killing was. I mean, you get to see her not fully chopping him up, but she definitely chops off his hand at one point with the axe, and it's just gross. There's like blood stains on the floors. It's a really intense killing. And so her memory is then restored. Oh, and then she's bathing in the bathtub, and it's filled with like his blood that she washed off of herself. Not like with Neon Demon, where they probably actually poured the blood into the bathtub to bathe in it. Huh. But then we get to see the point where the ghost pops out of Miranda when she's standing at the mirror afterward. So Miranda's brought up to speed. She knows exactly what happened. She knows who made her do it, but she still doesn't know why. First of all, before we get to the why, what were your thoughts about this whole murder scene?
I just was like, what all else did she find out for her to go so aggressively? But when she like get to a point like that and you experienced or found out something, you have a moment where you can just snap and all sanity is truly lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we get to the revelation of, or the reveal of Willow Creek, which is her and her husband's farmhouse. They have, again, in the middle of nowhere. Like everything's in the middle of nowhere here, but somehow it's even more in the middle of nowhere than the house they currently live in. And what she does is she's holding the photo and blood drops onto it. But it's not like her nose was bleeding because they turned the camera back on her and nothing's happening here. So she took it as a sign and she's like, okay, well, I guess I gotta go to Willow Creek. And she takes the car, drives to Willow Creek. And here's where the big revelation happens. As she's going through the barn, she's trying to see what kind of clues could be there. Like, why would Rachel lead her there? And she sees a box, just one box that says video camera or something like camcorder. And she decides to go check the underground cellar. There's a door right there to an underground cellar. And she opens it up and she sees there's no pretty way to put this. It's a rape porn studio, basically. There's a couple of cameras set up, I think. It was just the one camera. No, it was a couple lights and a camera. A bed with handcuffs and just nothing else. I mean, what else would you use that for? The camera turns on and she goes to check the camera and she sees somebody being tortured by her husband on this camera. So this is where she gets the knowledge that, oh my God, my husband is the biggest piece of scum. And now I know why Rachel led me here, because I don't know if it was actually, it wasn't her on the camera, but she assumed that she probably was one of the victims. And we know it's not Rachel on the camera because there's still a woman alive in that basement that she runs into. But not until the cops discover her down in the basement. And as the cops are getting ready to arrest her, the girl pops out from under the stairs and is like, help me, help me. She's been there for like 2 weeks with nobody like there to save her. I'm guessing no way out. I'm guessing that door maybe was locked, I'm guessing, from the inside, or maybe it got opened because of Rachel's ghost. We don't really know. Or maybe she was just so afraid to leave. Like, Doug could have scared the shit out of her and said, I have a guy here, he'll shoot you if you try to escape. Like, those kind of mental games, I feel, could come into play with a person like that, you know? But because they found this girl, it like completely changes what the police and the psychiatric facility wants to do with Miranda, because maybe the trauma of discovering this, and not the ghost helping her discover this, is what made her kill Doug in the first place. They don't know. What were your thoughts about this whole Willow Creek scene?
Well, I was just wondering if it, someone else had been back there to like take care of her, which I'm thinking that probably not, since Sheriff O'Brien later says like going back to clean up the evidence is how some people get caught. Initially I was like, so was this alone or did he have somebody? And to me, from the beginning I had thought that Sheriff was the one that would probably be his accomplice. I saw where they were trying to misdirect you to think that it would be Dr. Pete, but my intuition told me the whole time like that it was going to be the sheriff. And so I was just kind of like, I guess I was kind of like expecting him to like find her as she was finding everything and then take her out.
Yeah, I think at that point, I don't know, like when I originally watched this, that I was thinking Sheriff Bob. I'm still kind of leaning towards Pete. I mean, Pete and Phil, when they get back to the police station, are really fighting to like get Miranda on house arrest instead, get her away from the facility, get her away from the cameras. I know Phil wouldn't have been a suspect because he had no idea about his daughter. He was clearly really upset about the fact that his daughter was one of the victims and that he now knows that this entire time it wasn't a suicide. But, Pete could have been arguing, get her away from the camera so that I can now eliminate her before she finds out it was me helping out her husband the entire time. I never thought, like, she originally thought that the not alone meant there was more than one girl, which there was, but the not alone really meant that there was an accomplice. There was somebody helping out Doug the entire time. That I always felt it was leading towards that, because once Doug was killed, why would the ghost still need to traumatize Miranda in the way she was being traumatized, unless there was still somebody else, some other loose thread, not just, revealing that her death was not a suicide, but, that would be great for her dad to know so that he knows the truth. I mean, it's not great to know at all, but that he at least knows the truth about what happened, that he doesn't blame his daughter for killing herself, but that there had to be somebody else that was a huge threat that the ghost was trying to get rid of. So then we get to the point where we have Bob. Well, we have Bob coming to visit Miranda. And at the same time, we have Pete. And this is where you discover that Pete is, you get a better sense that he's not the bad guy the entire time, because he starts to Google the tattoo. And he's like, she's been telling me about this tattoo. She thinks that not alone, could mean that there's possibly, somebody else, or there's somebody that's still in the prison that's raping somebody, whether or not it's related to this or not. The ghost revealed it to her for some reason. The ghost broke her out for some reason. The ghost showed her what was going on at this house for some reason. So he just decides to Google it. And we have the encounter between Miranda and Sheriff Bob, and Bob is questioning her, like trying to figure out, and you could tell as the questions go on, like he's not asking her for police business. He's asking her for personal reasons. He goes, well, I gotta know if Doug confessed stuff to you. And I mean, even if he didn't outright confess stuff to you, he could have confessed stuff to you without saying it. So, I gotta know the things that happened. And Miranda starts putting it together that he's trying to get close to her to figure out like if he's safe or not. And what were your thoughts behind this whole scene? I know you said that you had an idea it was Bob earlier on, but what about this scene in particular?
I was just like, as a psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever it is, whatever kind of doctor you are, have you not ever heard of reverse psychology? Like, don't tell this man what you're thinking the criminal profile would be, especially when he fits it. Like, embellish it, as she said.
And she got really, like, first of all, there's nobody else in this whole sheriff's station too. She's alone with this guy. Yeah, I thought it was a really stupid move for her to be like, oh, well, I think the criminal would try to get close to me. Like she's revealing it, that she knows what he's doing. No, play it cool. Play it dumb. Wait until there are other people around and talk to them about it. Check his chest for a tattoo. I mean, the shirt gets ripped open and she sees the tattoo and she knows, and he knows that she knows. And there's this whole fight that goes down at the sheriff's office where she's hiding and he's got a big old gun. He's just shooting up the place. He's like, you just tried to escape. I can do whatever I want now. Pretty sure that's not true, but it is a little town police station, so maybe that is true. But it's like the ghost starts helping out. She releases some sort of steam that I guess is also a gas at one point, and one of the pipe gets him to shoot a window thinking it's Miranda, but it's really her ghost that's there. He shoots the computer, it causes a fireball, and he gets all inflamed. Okay, here's where I check out a little bit, because if it was really a gas and it had been going for that long, that had been released, and not just some steam heat, I feel like wouldn't there have been a bigger explosion in the entire sheriff's office and not just on him? The ghost could have maybe did something about that could be explained away by, supernatural occurrence, but a little unrealistic. And then after that, Pete shows up, and it's like, why did Pete show up? He Googled the tattoos. Did he see a picture of Bob, Sheriff Bob, wearing the tattoo to know that he had to come down there? That's never explained, and that bugs me, especially since there was such a great relationship at the very beginning between Robert Downey Jr.'s character and Halle Berry's character, that I kind of wish there was more of a transition to where he trusted her more and revealed that he would just be showing up at the sheriff's office maybe to talk to her about it. And then he just happened to be there when shit was going down. And maybe his life would have been in danger too, But there was none of that. He just shows up at the end, like, oh man, I'm glad he dealt with that before I got here.
It was like you said, pre-Iron Man.
Yep. I think it was just a little bit of a writing issue. You know how they say, and I don't believe this, but a lot of Stephen King movies don't know how to end. I like a lot of Stephen King movies and their endings. Like I like Sleepwalkers. I love Thinner. I know people hate Thinner. I fucking love Thinner. And it's just one of my favorites. The Mist, which had a different ending from the book, but it's a really intense ending. And while I hate what happens at the ending, I still think it's a really good way to end it. But I feel like the writers just didn't really know how to end this movie. And I don't know why. Because, you know, stuff pops in my head. But, you know, hindsight is 2020, I guess. What were your thoughts about this whole showdown between the sheriff and Miranda?
I thought she did a really good job holding her own, and I feel like she was able to have some confidence within herself as who she is. I feel like a lot of people in real life and in films, they give into their fear, and once you give into your fear, you've given the other person or people all the power. You've given them everything they want. Like, you know, like if she would have gone and hidden and waited for someone to come save her, that would have done her no good. He would have gone and looked for her and hunted her down, and then he would have been 10 times as more excited and fueled to do even more, you know, like that just gives him more of a hunger. So I was just glad that she stayed strong throughout it all, and she never was like, oh please don't hurt me, you know. She was like, she just gave it her all. So I was very impressed with it. I would have been upset if it would have had, you know, a different ending with her being, you know, starting out as someone strong and then ending as weak. Like that would have just sucked.
Yeah, she definitely had a great final girlness about her. One of those like Nancy Thompson or Ginny. She definitely fitted. She definitely fit that category of horror movie characters. So I'm glad too. She was really smart at the hiding. Some of them are so bad at hiding, but she was really good at the hiding and coming out when needed. Oh, that's the other thing I didn't like about the ending though, because he's burning up, he's gonna die, and she shoots him. And I'm like, you could get in trouble for that. Like, let the fire kill him. Don't shoot him. He's still an officer and you still have stuff to prove. So I didn't understand why she needed to shoot him, but that's my logical brain in a movie that logic is not supposed to be a part of. So that's one other thing I would have changed.
I just think she needed to confirm that he was going to really be dead, you know.
True.
But point what you said is completely accurate. Like you still have all this stuff to prove. So it would be hard, like in the moment, like deciding, okay, am I going to be wise and make the choice that's going to help me in legal battles? Or do I just make sure that they're dead so that I maybe don't get killed later and potentially just die in prison?
It's true. I mean, I guess that is the scream factor with Sidney Prescott. You shoot them in the head, you make sure they're dead because the killer always comes back. Yeah. So, okay, I get that too. Then we get to the button ending, the ending on top of the ending, where we see that Miranda and Chloe are both free. Miranda's got a great new haircut, and Chloe is talking about, you know, you've opened a doorway now, and there's no, you know, there's going to be more coming at you. She's very much about the ghost whisperer life. And I'm wondering, we don't know this. We know she was being raped in the prison, but we don't know whether or not she was seeing ghosts too. I kind of get the sense that maybe she was also seeing ghosts, and that's how she was so involved. You know, one of the rapists and murderers was also raping her in the prison. So maybe the ghost was coming to her first. And that's why she was also kind of like not mentally there. There was the drugs that they were giving her, and she was having hallucinations that were really a ghost. And she was experiencing a traumatic event on top of everything, which is why she had to make up the devil fantasy thing that she was going through. But we don't really have confirmation that she was also seeing ghosts. We do know Miranda was. And Miranda's like, I shut that door. It's done. We're good. But then there's the ghost boy in the middle of the road. You don't know he's a ghost yet until a ambulance or a fire truck starts driving down the street and goes right through him. His body just disappears, fades away. As you're pulling away, you see the "Have you seen this kid?" sign posted to a telephone pole. So obviously that kid has been killed, and now Miranda might be on a new journey to find out who killed this kid. This kid is possibly reaching out to her. There's, a potential sequel right there, but I feel like Ghost Whisperer came out probably shortly after this and probably took the reins on it. I think it was after this movie. That show didn't last too long, so I think that was an early to mid 2000s show. But yeah, what do you think about Miranda's future as a ghost hunter?
Yeah, I feel like, hey, if that's what gives you purpose and that fuels you to get up and go do what you need to do, then go for it. I mean, if that were my gift, I would want to be able to help whomever I could. Kind of sucks being, in that position because of all the different circumstances and different possible outcomes that could happen. But, like, nothing is ever without a cost. Nothing is really ever free. So you've always got to pay some kind of a price with anything. So I just hope that she is finding purpose in herself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to the end. The only other thing to really talk about is the Limp Bizkit cover of Behind Blue Eyes. I'm not gonna lie, I love that song. I absolutely love that cover. I know they got a lot of crap for that when it came out, but Limp Bizkit is one of those bands that people like to punch like it's a punching bag. And yes, there's a lot of cheesiness about Limp Bizkit. I'm not gonna lie and say they're my favorite band in the world, but some of their songs are bangers. Bangers. I think that's what people call good songs now. You just want to throw your head back and forth and jump up and down when you listen to some of their songs. This was not one of those kind of songs for them, and I think that's why they got a lot of crap. And also, I can't remember the lead. Do you remember the lead singer's name?
Fred Durst.
Thank you, Fred Durst. He wasn't, I don't think he was considered like a sex symbol. Like, he was just a guy with a baseball cap in the band, and the music video in it makes him out to be like, he's so sexy, but he's in the psychiatric ward and whatever. I can't remember if Halle Berry's actually in this video. I just remember him and his big blue eyes in the music video. So I thought that was an interesting take, but the song is really well done, and he's actually a really good singer. I mean, you're used to hearing him like white boy rapping and screaming and rolling and stuff. You're not used to hearing him really sing, and he actually has a really decent voice. So if you've never heard this cover before, go listen to this cover as soon as you're done listening to us. But I like it, and I definitely added it to my playlist once I remembered that it existed. So all right, well, that's it. We are at the end of the movie, so let's talk about what's coming up. Do you have anything going on this week?
Probably disappointments with the kids. I'm trying to get all that taken care of and everything. Nothing really, just everyday life.
Okay, cool. I know that spoiler alert for a potential future thing, Dad and De Niro from Dad Watches Horror Movies is looking to do a show with the four of us, a live thing. It would be on Instagram. If I can get the video afterwards, I'll post it to our YouTube page, and they'll probably post it to their YouTube page. So I don't know if I'll post it to ours or just link to theirs, because we don't want to have like two competing videos posted, and it would be their show, but they want to talk Reanimator with us.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's a great movie to talk about. So hopefully we'll be doing that sometime in the next like month or so. We still have to work out schedules. But other than that, today we're filming on a Tuesday. So Terror Tuesdays is tonight. I still don't know if I'm starting the Patreon full reaction thing. It's going to depend on how the rest of my day goes today. But it has already been revealed that we are watching The Howling tonight. And yes, this is my first time watching The Howling, which I know. I'm almost positive we taped this, and I could have watched it when I was so young that I don't remember watching it. I remember watching one of the sequels. It wasn't 2 with Christopher Lee. It was the one, I want to say it's part 4, with the guy from the show Pretender, which was a show that came out around the same time as The Profiler. And he was this beautiful guy named Jared who escapes from a psychiatric facility for geniuses. And there was some center trying to use his genius to be like a spy. And as the Pretender, he could pretend to be anybody in any business, in any occupation, because he was so smart. He could just do it. And he would be like a chameleon and hiding from the center, being these different positions in these different parts of the country or the world. And the center would be chasing him down the entire time. And somehow this show connected to The Profiler. But the guy who was Jared, the Pretender, was in this Howling sequel. So if I can look that up, I'll try to remember which one that was. But oh, do you have that? You have the fourth one?
I don't. I have the sixth. I was trying to find out what it was. It's not marsupials, is it? Probably.
I don't know. It's been so long since I watched it too. It was one of those we taped off of cable, so I don't have it anymore because my mom got rid of all those tapes.
I have to look now.
But yeah, this will be like I already know like the twist ending of what Dee Wallace does. I know that stuff because I've watched so many documentaries. It's been spoiled for me. But the stuff in the middle, the stuff in the beginning, I don't really know like who's gonna live, who's gonna die. But I'm still excited because I know it's a classic. It's a great werewolf movie. Today is the third day of the 3 days of the full moon cycle. So I thought that's perfect. We had the fullest of the full last night and the beginning of the full moon the night before. So very Buffy the Vampire Slayer terms of full moons. But I'm excited to finally check this one off my list. And then next week will be what was supposed to be Audition, but we watched that on Joe Bob last week. So I've watched that now. Is going to be replaced by a Lovecraftian movie. And that's all I'll say about that. So I'm very excited because this is a movie that didn't make it to my list because I thought I was going to watch it on my own at some point. And so I'm forcing myself to watch it earlier than probably planned for Terror Tuesdays. So this week and next week gonna be a lot of fun. And I think that's it for now.
I hate that you tell me what happens to them because like now I'm like now I can't guess. Like if I know, it's because you probably told me about it and I just forgot.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure I haven't told you. So that's just a little extra clue, but I'm pretty sure I haven't told you what it's going to be. So feel free to guess when I have the quote come out.
I can't wait to see it.
All right, guys. You can catch us at Mary Graves, CLE, Maire Graves, CLE on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You could probably just find me, Mary Graves, for our Facebook page. You can find Heather at Heather_loves_horror, and she is on Instagram and Twitter. You're Heather Myers? Heather Beck Myers?
I think
you use your full name on there.
I think so. It's something like, I don't even know.
You know what? Just find me and you'll find her as one of my followers and followees, whatever, following. Yeah. But and also the Heather Loves Horror podcast for previous episodes and anything upcoming is on her YouTube channel. So go check that out. If you are watching on YouTube, our show is in most podcast places. And if you're on or listening to the podcast, find us on YouTube, the May Queens Podcast. Also, May Queens Pod on Instagram and on Twitter. I think that covers everything. Oh, Google Mary Graves and you'll find my YouTube page as well because I don't have my own URL yet. But that should be it. All right. I will talk to you next week.
All right. Have a great day and a great week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.